This conference will now be recorded.
All right. So you have on screen now a document that says inheritance between classes. It is in the folder, the Programming for Engineering folder in Google Drive that was shared with you. So please access it. And why is inheritance important? All right, so we're going back to classes and objects. Now, we can declare a class that has a number of functions and a number of variables. Yeah. And I'm going to focus on the individual now, the person. Now, I am my name, my name. I'm Therese Chambers. Where did I get that name from? I inherited my surname from my father, but I got my own individual first name. Now, some of you may have inherited your surname from your father or your mother, and some of you may have also inherited your first name from some other member of your family. Now, in families, you also have other things that you inherit. For those of you who are fortunate enough, you may inherit your parents' wealth or your grandparents' wealth. That is an inheritance. And it's something similar to that we are doing when you're inheriting. One class is inheriting from another class. This is something that we do to make programming easier. There's nothing difficult about inheritance between classes. It just makes your life easier when you are programming. Now, let's go through the document that you have on screen here. I need to get this out of the way. All right, an important feature of classes is the inheritance. This allows us to declare a class and create an object that are both derived from a previously declared class. The derived class will include members of the base class plus its own functions. Now you can take your time and read through all of this. What I want to go straight to is an example that I have here. I have here a class called polygon. Now, what's a polygon? It's a shape, all right? And if you're writing a program that includes shapes, whether they be triangles, rectangles, squares, circles, well, not so much circles, but they all have certain things that are similar. Okay, what could be similar in polygons? First of all, when you look at a class, you have to have a constructor function. You must have an input, or you should have an input function. You should have an output function, and then you have some calculations. Yeah. Now, do output functions have to be different in each class? They could be the same. Particularly when you look at the examples that we have here. A rectangle and a triangle. They're both polygons, aren't they?
Yes, miss.
Yes,
They
ma'am.
are both polygons. They're just different types of polygons. Okay. So this says this could be represented by the class polygon, from which we could derive two classes, rectangle and triangle. The polygon class would contain members that are common for all polygons. In our case, the width and the height. The width and the height of a rectangle and a triangle would be both rectangles and triangles would have both width and height. How they do their calculations for area and the volume, well, no, not volume, the area itself would be different. The perimeter, it would also be different. But in both the rectangle and triangle, you have a width and a height, and you have to get both width and height, all right? So therefore, your rectangle and your triangle could be derived from polygon. So if we have a class called Polygon that has an input statement that asks for width and height, and also has those variables width and height, then we don't have to rewrite everything. We just allow our new classes, rectangle and triangle, to inherit those functions and variables from Polygon. So classes derived from others inherit all the visible members of the base class. That means that if a base class includes a member A and we derive it to another class with another member called B, the derived class will have both A and B. In order to derive a class from another, we must use the colon operator. That's this little colon right here. And we have to use it in the declaration of the derived class, and it gives the example of how. Now let's go back to your parents. Now, everything that is public about your parents, that you're in, everything that is public about your parents, you inherit. For example, well, in most cases, in an ideal world, though, I have to be careful here. In an ideal world, everybody would inherit their father's surname, okay? Or in an ideal traditional English world, I should say, everybody inherits their father's surname. In other cultures, it is different. In the Spanish culture, you inherit both mother and father's surname. Now, your parents have some things that are personal to them, that are personal and private to them. And even though it's not a public, it is not obvious to persons outside, you would probably also inherit those. And you yourself may not even realize that you inherit them, but they're there and you are able to access them when you need. And a simple example, I'm quite sure that none of you have access to your, I'm gonna use your mother now, your mother's handbag. And you can't go in her purse and take out whatever money she has, or you shouldn't be able to. All right. But then if you desperately need something, and I know some of you, this may apply to you need to pay your school fees and you don't have it. Your mother might go in her purse, you know, or go take out her debit card or credit card, and she find that money and give it to you. Right? In some situations, not in all, but in some situations. So what I'm saying is that if the base class has something that is private to them, the class, the child class will, or the derived class will inherit what is in the base class. So width and height are private member variables of the polygon class, but because rectangle and triangle are inheriting from polygon, they also have a width and a height from polygon. But the funny thing is, rectangle and triangle can also have the same width and height declared in them as well. And there's absolutely no mix-up, because my purse is separate and apart from my mother's purse. Yet, if I ask my mother for money, she will go in her purse and give me. All right, I can only access mine. But if I want from her purse, I can get it from her purse through her. And it's the same thing with classes, inheritance in classes. And I can go a little further. I can, if I so choose, directly access my mother's purse if I want to. She might not be pleased about that, but I can. And it is the same thing with C++ programming. The derived classes can access the private member variables in the base class if it is needed. But we'll get to all of that later on. All right, so let us see now. How do you declare a class that inherits from a base class. Now, first of all, you all know what this looks like. This is in the declaration of a class. When you're writing a class, you have the class name, the class, word class, and you then have the class name. Then you have your open bracket and all your functions. But when you're inheriting, you have the class, derived class name, which in this case could be either triangle or rectangle. And then you have your colon. And what this colon does is to state exactly which class the derived class is inheriting from. So it now states it is inheriting publicly from the base class. And this is where you'd have polygon. Now you have different types of inheritance. Coming out right back to people, you know. You have public inheritance, you have protected inheritance, and you have private inheritance. And it is a specifier. It describes how you inherit. Some of us publicly inherit our parents' name. Some of us protected, say in case of adopted children, the birth parents' name, that is protected. And you have some that are private. Some people who don't know the names of their birth parents. That is completely private. They can find it out if they search for it, but it is private. Somebody's asking me about file streams, and you have a lab based on that. I spoke to Mr. Wright. You won't be doing file streams until next week, right? And he knows that.
Yeah, miss.
Next when, miss?
Next Wednesday.
Next.
We're meeting again next Wednesday.
Thanks for the update.
Okay. All right. So here I have a program, and this is showing my class called Polygon. Okay. And don't mind how this is done in that I have my member variables declared first in the class. That can be done. You can put your protected or your private first and then your public afterwards. All right. And we have some different ways of doing our class definition. But tell you what, I want to open this in code blocks so that you can see how it works. So give me a minute. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and then come back to it. Okay? Let me find it and open it for you. But you can keep asking me questions if you need to.
Yes. The double colon, so you have a colon.
Scope resolution operator.
Okay, that's what it is. So it has nothing to do with inheritance and how it's.
No, the scope resolution operator is in the definition of the to do with the definition of the class member functions. I find this now.
Miss,
Yes.
question, Miss. What is the difference between the classes and the structure? Because I was doing some research on it, and they were saying that there's only one difference or something like that. So I was just asking the difference because I couldn't really go in depth with it.
Okay, the only difference is a struct doesn't have functions and a class has functions.
Go again, Miss.
A struct does not have functions. A class has functions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, let's get back here now. All right, so can you see this?
Yes, miss.
Okay, let me save it. do this. All right, so here I have, I need to modify this just a little bit. All right, here I have my class called Polygon. Now, a number of things are different from how we normally do it. First of all, we're not using private, we're using protected. Protected allows the functions within my derived class to directly access the private member variables of the base class. All right. So here, Polygon would be the base class, and the variables with height A and P are all protected member variables, meaning that any class that inherits Polygon can directly access with height A and P. Now, within my class Polygon, I have a number of functions. First one that I want to point out is the constructor function called Polygon. Now, you might see it looking a little bit different. This is called an inline function definition. You know how we before would define our functions outside of the declaration of the class? So we go at the bottom and we put the name of the class, scope resolution, name of the constructor, and then we say width equal height equal 1, A equal 8, P equals 6. That is how we normally do it. However, you can actually do the definition of your functions within the class itself during the definition. And this is called an inline function definition because you're doing it all in one line. Now, I could have just left this with a semicolon right here and then taken all this out and defined my constructor outside. However, I can do this by saying this is my constructor Polygon. And what does my constructor function does? It initializes width to 1, height to 1, A to 8, and P to 6. All right, these are all individual statements that I can do. And if you notice, there is no semicolon at the end because each of these statements already has their semicolon. Now, the other functions within the class Polygon are then defined below. I have area where I am saying that A is equal to 100. I'm not doing any calculation here because really, how do you calculate the area of a polygon? What is the area of a polygon dependent on?
The type of polygon.
The type of polygon, the shape itself, number of sides, and we don't know. This is just a random polygon. So I am just fixing the area of the polygon A to 100, and I'm returning A. I have get info, and all my get info function does a polygon is to get the height and the width. I have my print, and all my print function does is to print A. All right. So that's it for Polygon. Okay, I'm not even gonna get to set values just yet. That's a different thing, we'll get there in a minute. Now, look at my class called Rectangle. First of all, my Rectangle class is inheriting publicly from Polygon, all right? And the only functions that my Rectangle class has is area and get info. And that is because I want to have a separate get info. Don't have to, but I want to. Okay, just as I said to you, I have a handbag, my mother has her own handbag. All right. Now the area function too, in a polygon, we don't know how to calculate area, so it just has a value that is set to it. But how do you calculate the area of a rectangle? It's height times width, yeah? So we need to have a specific function called area for a rectangle. For rectangle get info, that is this function. What does it do? It gets height and width. For rectangle area, it multiplies width times height and it returns A. Now, if you notice, I don't have a function in rectangle called print because I don't need one. I am using it from Polygon. Also, if you notice, there are no private member variables in Polygon. And I don't need to because, sorry, there are no private member variables in rectangle because they're already in Polygon. However, my getInfo function of rectangle is directly accessing height and width. And that is because rectangle inherits from Polygon. Height and width are both protected, so they're also available in rectangle. So that's a direct access.
So Miss, so to get this straight, you're saying that rectangle is accessing height and width, are only accessing height and width from Polygon?
It is not accessing height and width from Polygon. Because it is inheriting height and width from Polygon, rectangle has height and width.
Well, so the height and width that rectangle has, it inherits it from Polygon.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's my choice of words then.
Yeah, it's just how you look at it. When you were a child and you were living with your mother has an address. Guess what? You have an address too. If you were getting letters, you would get letters in your name to the same address as your mother, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Not your mother's name. You'd get it in your name at the same address. Okay. And then when you move out now, you still have an address. It's just that it is no different from your mother, but you now have your own address. All right. So that is area. No, triangle only has an area function. It doesn't have a getInfo function for itself. But you need an area function because the way you calculate area for a triangle is quite specific. It's a half of the width times height. Yeah. So now let's see how this runs. Ignore the ones that I've commented out. When you are testing it, you can uncomment them and try it out. Now I have a rectangle called rect, a polygon called W. I call on the getInfo function of rectangle. Notice, let's go back up to the class of rectangle. All right, it has a getInfo function, it has an area. So this getInfo function that we're using here is the getInfo function of the rectangle. And I want you to note, look at the getInfo function of polygon. It is enter polygon height and width. The getInfo function of the rectangle is enter rectangle height and width. All right. Triangle doesn't have its own getInfo function. So tell me, what would the getInfo function of triangle say when it is doing an output? Enter what?
Enter the height and the base.
Enter polygon or enter triangle? Height and width.
Polygon.
It would enter polygon because it would be using polygon. Exactly. That is the function that it would inherit. So let's go back down to the main function. All right. I don't have the, let me get the triangle here. Let me put in triangle. Sorry. TRG1 dot get info. All right, and we have w.area.print and okay, and then I will have TRG1 dot print. Okay, so I have my rectangle declared, my triangle declared, my polygon declared. I then have get info for rectangle, then calculate the area. I have get info for triangle, then calculate the area. And I print for both rectangle and triangle. Then I have the area function for the polygon W and the print for polygon W. Now let us see how this works. Let us compile it first of all. Sure, it compiles. I have a problem. Yes, it's not 1, it's an L. Okay, was that it? Save, compile, and let us run it now. So notice, I'm coming down here. So can you see the program and the the window, the executable window? The first function to be called was the get info function for rectangle. Hence you have enter rectangle height and width. And I'm going to put 6 and height for 6 and width for 7. All right. And then what should happen in the background is the calculation of the area of rectangle. Then we will have the get info function of the triangle. So what are you expecting to see? Enter what? Polygon height and width. Because if you remember the function, the get info function for polygon, that is what it says. The triangle doesn't have its own get info function. It is using the one of polygon. So I'm going to put in 6 and 5. All right. Then next we will have the output, the print of the rectangle area and the print of the triangle area. And what are you expecting to see? Oh, and then you have the print of the polygon. So there are 3 things you're going to see output. So the first one is going to be what?
42.
42. The second one is going to be what?
No, 10, 3, 10, 5, 15, or 7.5.
Oh, now let's change this. 6. I'm going to change it to 6 and 6. So you're expecting to see what? 18. And 18. Then the next one 18. You're expecting to see, should see 100. And that is exactly what you see. Any questions here? Any questions?
Mr. 100, what's that again?
If we go back to the polygon, remember the polygon area, A equals 100. Turn.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So that is what happened there.
All right, miss.
Okay.
It's because I initialize A to 100, that's why?
That's right.
All right.
We set the area of the polygon to be 100 because we can't really calculate the area of a polygon unless you know what sort of polygon it is.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And would you believe, ladies and gentlemen, that's the sum total of inheritance. Anything else is just fluff. Now, these are the same programs that you see here on the screen now, these are the same programs that I have and will upload to you, so you can go through them, play around with them. All right. But I just want to point out here the access specifiers that we use: public, protected, and private. What exactly do these mean in terms of inheritance? Now, if you inherit publicly, all right, if the type of inheritance is public, what will happen is that members of the class can access anything that is public, can access anything that is private, can access anything that is protected. So you have functions within the class itself, all right, the public functions. They can access protected and private member variables of itself. Now, in the derived class, if the inheritance is public, it can access everything in the base class that is public. It can also access everything in the base class that is protected, but it cannot access anything in the base class that is private, not unless it jumps through some hoops. Remember I saying that to every rule, there are exceptions. You can get around it, but that is not, you might scroll down and see it, but I'm not going to discuss it this evening. So for the derived classes, everything that is public is accessible to members of the derived class and functions of the derived class. Anything that is in the base class that is protected can be accessed by the derived class. Anything that is private cannot be accessed. Now, non-class members, such as your main function or any other function that you declare outside of the class, it can access the public member functions. That would be through the object name. However, as what we've been doing in our main function a while ago. However, it cannot directly access the protected member functions or the protected member variables. And it cannot access anything that is private. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All right, so the derived classes would be like the rectangle and triangle.
That's right.
And
that is right.
You said that on the way the main program can access them is like
The public functions.
So when you name rectangle rect, that's how you would access it.
That's right. The object of the rectangle class, you can only access the public member functions through the object name. Okay. Okay, let's see. I want you to, this that I have here about class daughter, protected mother, and I think I have son here as well. Yes, class son. I want you to copy and paste this particular program, run it, and see exactly what it does. Be careful when you're copying and pasting. The quotations might change. You might need to erase them and type them over. But just copy them, paste them, and run this and see what happens. So just so that you understand how inheritance works. All right. If you have any questions on it, you can email me and I will respond. Okay. Now the last thing is multiple inheritance. You can, one class can inherit from multiple classes. In the same way I have a mother and a father and I inherit from both, I can, it's the same way that classes, a derived class can inherit from more than one base class. Can even inherit from 3, 4, 5, 6, any amount of base classes. All right, so it makes life a little bit easier. For example, in your assignment, you're working on number systems. Now, every number system must have an output function. Every class of a number system must have an output function. So this is something that you could create number system that has one function in it that is an output. You could have, you could inherit a get info function or an input function, as long as it's a standard input. You could do whatever you want, inherit whatever you want. All right, and this particular program that you see on screen now, again, is with Polygon. You have a class called output, and my rectangle class is inheriting publicly from Polygon and also from output. And the separation in the classes that you're, multiple classes that you're inheriting from is just a comma. All right. And again, please copy, paste these and run them and see how they work. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? No?
Yes.
Well,
Yes. Yes, ma'am. You said that it can access multiple base classes, right?
That's right.
Can it access outside of that program like you were teaching us the other day?
All right. To do that, you would have to include the header file that contains the class that you want to inherit from. And that inclusion has to be in the declaration. Sorry, it has to be in the header file of the class that you are declaring.
Okay.
Not in the main function, but in the class itself, the header file with the class itself. So if you have box, for example, in a header file already, and you want to inherit box in a new class that you are declaring in a new header file, you have to include the header file that box is found in the header file that you are declaring for your new class. So you just put in your number include and whatever the header file name is. That has to be done within the new class, not in the main function.
Yes, earlier.
What you can do, send it to me when I have some time. I'll take a look and advise you. All right, so we're going to meet again 4 p.m. last class, 4 p.m. next week, Wednesday. You can use this very same link. I don't need to send it to you again, but I will, to join the class, and we will be working on file streams. I'll answer whatever questions you have on dynamic arrays and inheritance, and then we finish up with file streams next week, Wednesday.
So, yes. The test for Monday.
I will have to talk to Mr. Wright. I haven't spoken to him yet, but when we're finished, I will talk to him. And the only reason why I am going to see if this can be done, but I should is because of the changes that you may have experienced because lectures are rescheduling. That's the only reason. All right?
All right, miss. Thank you.
Okay. He may or may not change it, but I will talk to him about it.
Miss, excuse me, miss.
Yes.
I don't know if you have discussed this already still, but the test, miss. Could we get the average on the test or the grades on the test?
Oh, I am struggling. I haven't marked it yet, but you have to get it next week.
Miss, what about the exam, miss, the final exam? How would that
I
be
did
done?
speak about that earlier on. There is no final decision on that, but your exam can be held online.
Okay, miss, okay. And it's multiple choice,
No, it's
short
a programming
answers.
exam. Programming.
Okay, okay, okay. All right, miss. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Miss,
Yes.
you know, I'm getting multiple errors with the program that
As I said, Mr. Wilby, you're going to have to send it to me for me to take a
Oh.
look at.
Okay, miss. Okay.
All right.
All right, miss.
Okay, so we end it here, ladies and gentlemen. See you next week, 4 p.m.
All right, miss.
on Wednesday. Okay, have a good evening.